I wasn't originally going to do a thoughts on video about Andor, but I finished it yesterday and I can't stop thinking about it. I'm a little late to the party on this one for a couple of reasons. One, Rogue One bores me. I'm sorry, it does. I know there are people who like that movie. I have watched it multiple times to see if I was just in the wrong place the first time I saw it, but it just kind of bores me. I know that there are a group of people who clamour for more Star Wars fiction that has nothing to do with the Jedi and the Sith and the Force and all that, and I'm happy for them because they are getting a lot of that at the minute. But I guess I'm basic because I tend to find that stuff less interesting than the stuff with the Jedi and the Sith. I like it when the laser swords go whoosh whoosh, I'm afraid. For instance, I know Solo is highly regarded, but I also found Solo to be quite boring. I like The Mandalorian, but I don't know if it counts because, spoilers for the end of episode 1, I guess, you've got Baby Yoda, and he's very much force sensitive. So when they announced a slew of new Disney Plus Star Wars shows, Andor was pretty far down on my list. Even though everyone else seemed to be really excited about it, I was like, it's a prequel to a prequel, and I didn't like the source material. Why would I like this? But I heard so many damn good things about this show that eventually I was like, fine, I'll watch it. And it has, in my opinion, quite a slow start. Episodes 1, 2, and 4, specifically, I remember being like, why am I watching this? Like, it was fine, it was character building, but after hearing so much rave reviews of this show, I was like, I'm not seeing it, and I'm sure that those rave reviews probably weren't when those episodes were coming out. Episode 3, some stuff went down, so that was interesting. I was like, okay, that's probably what kept me going. I was like, when episode 4 was a bit dull again, I was like, I know what this show can be, so I'm gonna stick with it. And boy, am I glad I did. Something that surprised me about the show was how much of it there was. This is a 12 episode season with 50 minutes per episode, and it's all pretty high budget stuff. And due to that, they're able to take this more kind of like lifetime approach to Andor, where we're not just seeing like one part of his life, we're seeing multiple story arcs unfold in a single season, and they feed into each other, and they're you know they're because of each other, but they're still different times in his life. And I'm not talking about years and years and years here, obviously, but still, it's an interesting way of doing it. Like, I can fully see a version of this show where season 1 ended with the end of the heist, and season 2 began with his incarceration and imprisonment, right? But they didn't do that. But yeah, the heist is what first really grabbed me in this series. At first I was like, oh, so we're taking this character and plopping him down here and doing a different set of circumstances with a different set of characters. Oh, okay. But within an episode, I was like, oh shit, I care about these characters. And I'm not going to go on too much about the plot because if you're watching this video, presumably you've watched the show. So I'll just say that the storytelling is so effective that not only is Andor the first non-Force focused show in the Star Wars series fiction canon that I'm really interested in, it's also the most I've ever been invested in this idea of the rebellion, which is kind of a big deal because that's what the original movies were all about. This show does such a good job of showing oppression and how it's affected the lives of these characters and how colonialism is bad. Shocker of a take, but there it is. They do that so effectively that you're really fucking rooting for the rebels, which you normally would be anyway, but I think it also speaks to how good the characters are. That, for instance, when the kid who was like writing his journal and is super passionate about taking down the Empire and everything, the second I saw him I was like, he's fucking dead, there's no way he survives this. He's a character to make us sad, because I unfortunately I can't turn my brain off from that meta level of thinking. I'm sure there's a bunch of people who are also like this, but I was like, he's doomed. But that didn't stop me from being super sad when he died. And it was horrible too. It wasn't just like a blaster to the chest. It was like an accident on their escape, and like he got paralyzed and he couldn't feel his legs and he was in great pain, and he still helped them plot their trajectory out of the orbit and shit before he died, which is super sad. Something I wasn't expecting to see from a series either is, and I guess I should have been, but again I really didn't give much thought to this series going in because I didn't care much about it, is like seeing Mon Mothma in her early days and really seeing how the rebellion kind of got started with it being so small and there only being a few key players and them kind of being at each other's throats a lot of the time as well. It's not just an easy we're all friends, let's take the rebellion down. It's, oh well, you've got the new Republicans over here and you've got the separatists over here. Like, you've got different political factions within this burgeoning rebellion, And all the cloak and dagger stuff as well was super cool. It was fun to see Coruscant under Empire control, which I'm sure we've probably seen in like the Bad Batch, but I didn't get more than like 6 episodes into the Bad Batch. I might go back and keep watching that now because I'm very much in a Star Wars mood now. Something I thought the show did really well as well is Andor was our focus point for the first few episodes, and obviously remained our focus point throughout the series, but every character he met, or not every character, but a lot of the characters he met would then kind of like spin off. And I know this is probably a common technique in a lot of shows, but the way they introduced new cast members to the show, and then like for instance, like we meet Luthen through Andor, but then we see some of Luthen's kind of life and backstory, or not backstory, but we see what he gets up to away from Andor, and then through Luthen we meet Mon Mothma, and then after that we see what Mon Mothma's life is like away from Luthen, and it's just kind of like this slow introduction of this cast who don't always directly have things to do with each other, but are all caught in this web of consequence of each other's actions. Like you see how Mon Mothma's life is impacted by the siege, not siege, by the raid, by the fucking, what's the word, heist, and it's so subtly done you don't even realize it's being done until you're like, wait a minute, this show is like about Mon Mothma half the time now, when did this happen? I really enjoyed seeing like inside the Empire and how they deal with this situation, firstly from like the local police enforcement and how they mess up, and how they also perpetuate the Empire's rules and oppression, and then through the ISB agent blonde-haired lady whose name I will go and fetch now, Deidre Miro. God, I'd love to know how they come up with these names in Star Wars, because they have a certain, I don't know, there's rules to them. Like, you can hear a certain name and be like, that sounds like a Star Wars name, and people will agree with you. I'm not going to get into too much detail or go on for too much longer, but one thing I do want to mention is that this show had some incredible monologues. I mentioned this on Twitter, but I couldn't go into detail for spoilers' sake, but obviously we're getting full spoilers here, so here we go. Luthen's speech when that spy he has implanted in the ISB is talking to him and asks what he's sacrificed was so fucking well written and so fucking well delivered, and actually that's the case with all 3 of the monologues I'm mentioning here. Is it technically a monologue or if it's in reply to someone? I don't care, shut up. But the way he like legitimately ponders the question, and then as he's answering about how he's basically forsaken his soul, for want of a better term, which isn't his words, like he gets more and more angry about it as he's going, and it just feels so natural and real. And then Karis Nemec, that rebel boy in the heist, I keep forgetting the word heist today apparently, he has this wonderful voiceover from his book in one of the final episodes talking about oppression and how unnatural it is and how much work it takes versus freedom, which is just, you know, normal. And I thought it was one of the most beautiful speeches I've ever heard about oppression. I was like, did someone who was literally oppressed write this? It was just so nice in this world of pessimistic rebels who are talking about like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna live to see the day when we're free, but it's still worth dying for. It was so nice to hear like this optimistic speech about, yeah, this shit isn't normal, and one day it will go back to being normal. And it really rang true with me. And then finally Marva Andor, Cassian's mum, when she's got like her self-eulogizing speech as a hologram at the final episode, when like it slowly raises into like, oh, you know, if I'd done things differently, and like the Empire are listening, but like because she so slowly eases into fight the Empire, which is like her final words, it's such like a rousing speech, and it's so fucking well done, and they don't stop it from happening in time, that you're just like, yeah, if I was in that crowd I'd be fucking fighting too. So in conclusion, Andor is really fucking well written and really fucking well acted, and also really fucking well scored. It has an amazing soundtrack, and I never thought I would feel this way about a show which is a prequel to a movie which I do not care for, but it is absolutely sublime, and I hope it gets another season, and if it does, I hope it manages to keep up this level of quality and intrigue. I don't know if they've announced a season 2, I think there's clearly going to be one. There's still so much to tell with Mon Mothma and this burgeoning rebel alliance and all of that, and it's great. It also, I forgot to mention one last thing, the planet, which name I've forgotten, that Cassian lives on. Actually, we could go into critiques as well, but adult Cassian lives on reminds me a lot of the planet which is the home of the main character in the Rebels animated show. It's got similar vibes to me. I think it's very much inspired by that show. So yeah, a couple criticisms before I go, I guess. Andor's backstory in those first few episodes about how he grew up on a planet where there was a mining incident and how he's looking for his sister never really became anything. Felt unnecessary, felt slow when it was being told, and I don't know if they'll go back to it in a future season, but it just didn't. It was the low point of the entire show for me. Also, I'm wondering how wise it is to set up a story in which the stalker of the ISB agent saves her life and she's grateful and thankful to him and almost looks like she's going to kiss him in the final shot that they have together. I'm like, ooh. I get that they could just be setting up further problems with this guy, but also, oof, please don't turn a stalker plot into a romance. That will only enable real life stalkers, who, by the way, probably statistically kind of likely to be very interested in Star Wars content, just so. Thank you very much for watching this episode of, I almost said the Weekly Waypoint, of not even thoughts per episode, thoughts on Andor Season 1. I really enjoyed the show. Let me know what you thought about the show in the comments if you like, and I will see you back here for Season 2 if it ever happens.